Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now let me take you into a tale that unfolded right next door, in a place where the ordinary became extraordinary, and where a simple change in behavior led to a journey of emotional discovery. I've lived in this quiet suburban neighborhood for over 20 years. The streets are lined with mature oak trees, their branches forming a canopy that filters the sunlight into a dappled pattern on the pavement. The houses, mostly brick and siding, are well kept, with gardens that bloom in a riot of colors in the spring and summer. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, at least by sight, and where the rhythm of life is predictable, comforting. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, had always been a man of routine. Every morning at precisely 7:15, he would step out of his house, dressed in his crisp button-down shirt and slacks, and walk to his car. He'd give a polite nod to anyone he passed, but he never lingered for conversation. In the evenings, he'd return at 6 o'clock, sometimes stopping to check his mailbox before heading inside. He was a man of few words, and though we'd exchanged pleasantries over the years, I knew very little about him. That's why it was so startling when, one morning, I noticed a change in his behavior. It was a Tuesday, and I was out in my front yard, tending to the flower beds. The air was crisp, the kind of morning that makes you feel alive. I heard his front door open, and out of habit, I glanced up, expecting to see him in his usual attire, heading to his car. But instead, he was wearing a casual t-shirt and jeans, and he was carrying a toolbox. "Good morning, Linda," he said, his voice warm and friendly. I was so surprised that I nearly dropped my trowel. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," I replied, trying to hide my shock. "You're not heading to work today." He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "No, not today. I've decided to take some time off. Thought I'd finally get around to fixing that leaky faucet in the kitchen." I nodded, still trying to process this sudden change. "Well, that's nice. It's good to take a break now and then." He chuckled, a sound I hadn't heard from him in years. "Yes, it is. I've been so caught up in work that I've neglected a lot of things. Time to change that." We chatted for a few more minutes, and though it was a simple conversation, it felt significant. There was a lightness to him, a sense of ease that I hadn't seen before. As he walked back into his house, I couldn't help but wonder what had brought about this change. Over the next few days, I noticed more differences. He started spending time in his backyard, planting flowers and vegetables. He'd wave to me from across the fence, and sometimes we'd talk about gardening tips or the weather. It was nice, but it also made me curious. What had prompted this sudden shift in his demeanor? One evening, as I was sitting on my porch, enjoying the cool breeze, I saw him walking down the street. He was carrying a bag of groceries, and when he saw me, he waved and came over. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Not at all," I replied, gesturing to the chair next to me. He sat down, and for a while, we just sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, breaking the silence. "Yes, it is," I agreed. "I love this time of day." He nodded, and then, after a moment, he said, "Linda, I feel like I've been living in a bubble for so long. Work, routine, responsibilities. I forgot to take the time to really live." I turned to look at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. "What made you realize that?" I asked gently. He sighed, and for a moment, I thought he might not answer. But then he said, "A few weeks ago, I had a health scare. Nothing serious, but it made me stop and think about how I've been living my life. I realized that I've been so focused on work that I've missed out on so much. I don't want to look back and regret not taking the time to enjoy the simple things. I felt a lump in my throat. I'm sorry to hear about the health scare, but I'm glad you're okay. And I think it's brave of you to make these changes. He smiled, and there was a sadness in his eyes, but also a sense of hope. Thank you, Linda. It's not easy, but it's worth it. We sat there for a while longer, talking about life, about the things that mattered, and the things we'd let slip by. It was a conversation that stayed with me long after he'd gone back to his house. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about Mr. Thompson, about the changes he was making, and about the courage it took to step out of the familiar and into the unknown. It made me reflect on my own life, on the routines I'd fallen into, and the things I'd been putting off. Maybe it was time for me to make some changes too. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would bring us closer together, and that would teach us both about the importance of connection, of living in the moment, and of embracing the unexpected. The days that followed our conversation on the porch were filled with a quiet sense of anticipation. Mr. Thompson, or James, as he asked me to call him, continued to spend more time at home, tending to his garden and seemingly savoring the slower pace of life. I found myself drawn to his transformation, not out of nosiness, but out of a genuine curiosity and a growing sense of kinship. After all, at 56, I'd begun to feel the weight of my own routines, the quiet monotony of days blending into one another. One Saturday morning, I was out in my backyard, pruning the rose bushes that had grown wild over the summer. The air was warm, the kind of warmth that clings to your skin without being oppressive. I heard the familiar sound of James' back door opening, and moments later, he appeared at the fence that separated our yards. "Morning, Linda," he called out, his voice carrying a lightness that felt contagious. "Good morning, James," I replied, setting down my pruning shears. "How's the garden coming along?" He smiled, leaning on the fence. "It's a work in progress. I've got tomatoes coming in, and the zinnias are starting to bloom. But I could use some advice if you've got a moment." I wiped my hands on my gardening apron and walked over to the fence. "Of course. What do you need help with?" He gestured to a patch of soil near his back porch. "I'm trying to grow some herbs, basil, thyme, rosemary, but they're not thriving. I thought I was doing everything right, but..." He shrugged, a sheepish grin on his face. I chuckled. Herbs can be tricky. They need just the right amount of sun and drainage. Let me take a look. He opened the gate, and I stepped into his yard for the first time in years. His garden was neat but clearly a labor of love, with rows of vegetables and flowers interspersed. The air smelled of fresh earth and blooming flowers, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. As we knelt by the herb patch, I showed him how to check the soil moisture and explained the importance of pruning to encourage growth. He listened intently, asking questions and jotting down notes in a small notebook he pulled from his pocket. There was something endearing about his earnestness, the way he approached this new hobby with such determination. "You're a natural at this," I said, admiring the way he carefully replanted a basil seedling. He laughed softly. "I don't know about that, but I'm enjoying it. It's therapeutic, in a way. Helps me clear my mind." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Gardening has always been my escape, too. There's something about working with your hands, watching things grow, that puts life into perspective. We spent the rest of the morning in his garden, talking and working side by side. The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from favorite recipes — he was experimenting with homemade pesto — to childhood memories. He'd grown up on a farm in Noah. I learned that he'd been a widower for nearly a decade, and that his work had been his way of coping with the loss. But now he was ready to rediscover the joy in life. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, we took a break, sitting on his back porch with glasses of iced tea. The shade from the awning was a welcome relief, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of lavender from a nearby planter. "Linda," he said after a moment of comfortable silence, "I want to thank you for being so kind, for sharing your knowledge. It means a lot." I felt a warmth spread through me, not just from the sun, but from his words. "It's my pleasure, James. Really. It's nice to have someone to share this with." He looked at me then, his eyes soft but searching. "I feel the same way." There was a moment, just a fleeting moment, where the air between us seemed to shift, charged with something unspoken. But then he smiled, breaking the tension, and stood up. "How about I make us some lunch? I've got fresh tomatoes and mozzarella. Maybe we can make a caprese salad." "That sounds wonderful," I said, following him inside. His kitchen was cozy, with warm wooden cabinets and a large window that let in plenty of light. As he sliced tomatoes and tore basil leaves, I set the table, feeling a sense of ease that I hadn't felt in a long time. We ate lunch together, the flavors fresh and vibrant, the conversation light but meaningful. Afterward, as I helped him wash the dishes, he said, "You know, Linda, I've been thinking. Life is too short to spend it alone. I'm grateful for days like this, for moments of connection." I turned to look at him, my hands still wet from the dishwater. "I am too, James. I really am." He smiled, and in that smile, I saw a reflection of my own feelings, gratitude, hope, and the quiet joy of discovering something new. As I walked back to my house later that afternoon, I felt a sense of lightness, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. The day had been simple, but it had also been profound. It was a reminder that life's most meaningful moments often come from the smallest gestures, the quiet connections that weave the fabric of our lives. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a deeper bond, one that would challenge us, comfort us, and ultimately change us in ways we never expected. The weeks that followed our gardening day were filled with a newfound rhythm. James and I began spending more time together, not out of obligation, but out of a shared desire for companionship. We'd meet in the mornings for coffee on his porch, the steam from our mugs curling into the cool air as we talked about everything and nothing. Sometimes we'd work in our gardens side by side, the silence between us comfortable and reassuring. Other times we'd take walks around the neighborhood, admiring the changing colors of the leaves as autumn began to paint the world in shades of gold and crimson. It was during one of these walks that the first crack appeared in the calm surface of our growing friendship. The sky was overcast, the air heavy with the promise of rain, but we decided to go anyway, lured by the crispness of the season. As we strolled down the tree-lined street, James grew unusually quiet, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. "Everything okay?" I asked, glancing at him. He hesitated, then sighed. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something, Linda. It's just hard to put into words." I felt a flicker of concern but kept my voice steady. "You can tell me anything, James. You know that." He stopped walking and turned to face me, his expression serious. "It's about my health, the scare I mentioned before. It wasn't as minor as I made it sound. The doctors found something, a condition that's going to require surgery. It's not life-threatening, but it's complicated." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I reached out instinctively, placing a hand on his arm. "James, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He looked down, his voice soft. "I didn't want to burden you, and I guess I was afraid of how it might change things between us." I shook my head, my heart aching for him. "You're not a burden, James. Not to me. We're friends, and friends are there for each other, no matter what." He met my gaze then, and I saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear he'd been carrying alone. "Thank you, Linda. That means more than you know." We stood there for a moment, the world around us fading away until the first drops of rain began to fall. By the time we made it back to our houses, we were both soaked, but the heaviness in the air had lifted, replaced by a sense of solidarity. In the days that followed, James' health became a shared concern. I accompanied him to doctor's appointments, taking notes and asking questions when he seemed too overwhelmed to speak. We researched his condition together, sitting at his kitchen table with stacks of medical pamphlets and cups of tea. It was during one of these sessions that he opened up about his late wife, Margaret, and how her illness had taken a toll on him. "I felt so helpless," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I didn't want to go through that again. Didn't want to put someone else through it." I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. "James, you're not alone this time. And you're not helpless. We'll face this together, one step at a time." He squeezed my hand, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know what I did to deserve you, Linda." I smiled, though my own eyes were damp. "You were just you, and that's more than enough." The surgery was scheduled for the following month, and as the date approached, the tension between us grew. But so did our bond. We spent our days preparing, both practically and emotionally. I helped him organize his house, stocking the freezer with meals and setting up a comfortable recovery space in his living room. In the evenings, we'd sit by the fireplace, talking about our hopes and fears, our pasts and futures. One night, as the fire crackled and cast flickering shadows on the walls, James turned to me and said, "Linda, I need you to know something. If things don't go as planned, if something happens—" I interrupted him, my voice firm. "Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. But no matter what, I'll be here. You're not getting rid of me that easily." He chuckled, but there was a seriousness in his eyes. "I'm glad to hear it, because you've become very important to me." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt my breath catch, my heart pounding in my chest. "You're important to me too, James. More than you realize." We sat there in silence, the fire casting a warm glow over us, the weight of unspoken feelings pressing against the walls we built around our hearts. It was a moment of raw honesty, a glimpse into the depth of what we'd come to mean to each other. The night before his surgery, I stayed late, helping him pack his bag and going over the last-minute details. As I was about to leave, he stopped me at the door, his hand on my arm. "Linda," he said, his voice soft but steady, "thank you for everything, for being here, for being you." I turned to face him, my eyes searching his. "You don't have to thank me, James. This is what friends do. And maybe more." He smiled, a slow, tender smile that made my heart ache. "Maybe more," he echoed. I leaned in, pressing a kiss to his cheek, and for a moment, we stood there, the space between us charged with unspoken promises. Then I stepped back, squeezing his hand. "I'll see you tomorrow. You've got this." He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've got this." As I walked home under the starry sky, I felt a mix of emotions, fear, hope, and a deep, abiding love that had quietly taken root in my heart. The storm was coming, but I knew we'd weather it together. The morning of James' surgery dawned gray and heavy, the kind of day that feels like the world is holding its breath. I woke early, my stomach in knots, and made my way to his house. He was already up, dressed in a simple button-down shirt and slacks, his bag packed and ready by the door. He looked calm, but I could see the tension in the way he held his shoulders, the way his hands fidgeted with the strap of his bag. "Ready?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He nodded, giving me a small smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." We drove to the hospital in silence, the radio playing softly in the background. The streets were quiet, the world still waking up, and I found myself memorizing the details of the morning, the way the light filtered through the clouds, the sound of tires on wet pavement, the faint scent of James' cologne. It felt like a moment suspended in time, fragile and fleeting. At the hospital, the nurses were kind and efficient, guiding James through the pre-op procedures with practiced ease. I stayed by his side, holding his hand when they inserted the IV, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. But as the time for surgery approached, the reality of the situation settled over us like a heavy blanket. "Linda," James said, his voice quiet but steady, "if I don't make it through this..." I shook my head, cutting him off. "Don't. You're going to be fine. But just in case, I need you to know something." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "You've become so important to me, James. These past few months, they've meant everything. I don't know what I'd do without you." He looked at me, his eyes soft but intense. "You've changed my life, Linda. You've shown me what it means to live again. No matter what happens, I'll always be grateful for that." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them away, determined to stay strong for him. "You're going to come out of this, and we're going to have so many more moments together. I promise." He squeezed my hand, his grip firm. "I'll hold you to that." The nurses came then, wheeling him away, and I stood there, watching until he disappeared through the double doors. The waiting room was quiet, the air thick with anticipation, and I sank into a chair, clutching the small cross pendant I wore around my neck. I prayed, not just for James, but for the strength to face whatever came next. The hours dragged by, each minute feeling like an eternity. I tried to distract myself with a book, but the words blurred on the page, my mind constantly drifting back to James. I thought about the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the sound of his laughter, the way he made me feel seen and valued in a way I hadn't in years. I thought about the life we'd started to build together, the quiet moments and the shared dreams, and I realized just how much he'd come to mean to me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the surgeon emerged, his face unreadable. I stood up, my heart in my throat, and he gave me a small smile. "The surgery went well," he said. "James is in recovery now. He's going to be just fine." Relief washed over me, so intense that my knees nearly buckled. "Thank you," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you so much." I was allowed to see him a short while later, and though he was groggy from the anesthesia, his eyes lit up when he saw me. "Hey," he said, his voice hoarse but warm. "Hey," I replied, taking his hand. "You did it." He smiled weakly. "We did it." The days that followed were a blur of hospital routines and quiet moments of connection. I stayed by James' side, helping him through the pain and discomfort, reminding him to take his medication and keeping his spirits up with stories and laughter. Slowly but surely, he began to recover, his strength returning day by day. One evening, as the sun set outside his hospital window, casting a warm golden glow over the room, James turned to me and said, "Linda, I've been thinking. Life is too short to waste time. I don't want to wait anymore." I looked at him, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" He reached for my hand, his grip firm despite his weakness. "I mean, I love you, Linda. I've loved you for a while now, and I don't want to hide it anymore. I want to spend whatever time I have left with you, building a life together.